Hello everyone. As you can probably hear, I'm a little bit under the weather here, so please bear with me. Thankfully the main part of the video was filmed before I caught this cold, so you won't have to put up with my stuffy voice through the majority of the video. What we're looking at here are some recently arrived items sent over to me by my friend Ian Parker in the US. These are various items which I've picked up from US eBay and sent on to him. I think there's some other bits and pieces as well. Gulf War related kit for the most part. Ian's sorted me out with a US night camouflage parka as well. So very kind of Ian once again, both in amalgamating these bits and pieces I've sent over to him into one package and sending them on, and also gifting me some bits and pieces as well. So thank you once again, Ian, and we're going to have a look at exactly what has arrived now. There is no point in showing you the box. It was far too big to fit in frame, so we'll start having a look at the bits and pieces that arrived here. I'll take them out of the box and bring them over and we can have a look. You may hear a little bit of crackling in the background as well. I've got the fire on. It's a rather cold winter's evening here. So we'll start off with Canadian items. There's quite a lot of Gulf War kit in this lot, but we'll start off with a couple of Canadian items first of all. I have here a couple of versions of the shirt coat, the lightweight Canadian shirt coat, which we have here, which I think Ian has run through the laundry for me, which is very kind of him. Run through the wash. I think they smelled a bit of mildew and so forth from storage, I think, when they initially arrived with him. So he's kindly washed them for me. These are a 1980s and a 1970s example of the shirt coat. So this has the 4-hole buttons. This is prior to the introduction of the small looped buttons, and you can see we have the small loop buttons here that fit with a loop of cloth. This is also a 1980s example. It has the draw cord in line with the buttonhole down the front here, which means that when the draw cord is drawn in, it can be neatly tied away underneath. I think it's around the beginning of the 90s, very late 80s, this button moves about ½ an inch above, I think it is, above the draw cord, which means it's no longer in line, which makes it a little bit more awkward. And it's also a visual difference between the 80s examples and the slightly later 90s examples. So quite happy to have an 80s example of one of these. I'd quite like to pick another one of these up, so I'll have to get in touch with the chap who sold these to me and see if he's got another 1980s dated size 5. These are both size 5, and the chap selling them very kindly picked them out for me. I forget his name on eBay, the seller, but he has a whole load of these and very kindly picked me out these two. So I have a 70s and an 80s example of these here. So a couple of Canadian shirt coats there. A couple of small US items. We have here an M1 carbine pouch and an M1936 pistol belt, as you can see, both in OD. And the idea of these is for a friend of mine who has a Viet Cong kit, and rather than using the repros he has, okay, these are a little bit beaten up, but they would be perfect for reuse, for later reuse, obviously taken from the ARVN, and that was the idea. So Ian very kindly threw these in for me. I bought these off eBay. I have examples of these, and I'll sort of mix and match between. And as I say, these are for the intention is to have a set for a friend of mine, Matt, who you've seen on my secondary channel talking about his Viet Cong kit over there. He will be using these, so I bought these for him off US eBay, and he'll be using them for his Viet Cong setup rather than repros, which will look quite good. I think they're suitably sort of war weary, as it were, so should look quite good. So just before we move on to the Gulf War kit, which has arrived, one more sort of miscellaneous item to show. And we have here some lead, which Ian has kindly sent to me. And we have a bullet mold. Now, this is probably 19th century, but I've wanted something, just a bullet mold for casting around balls there, as you can see, pistol caliber. I've wanted one of these for a while to basically show how these operate, displays of English Civil War and that sort of era. This is not an English, obviously this is not a bullet mold of the era, although very similar bullet molds were used. This of course has a small cutter here to remove the sprue from the bullet, which is believed to be something which was really necessary when rifled firearms became the norm. Obviously, you're firing a round ball from a rifled barrel, you don't want a sprue, you don't want the bit of lead that remains in the hole here, obviously when you pour and mold the bullet. So you have this sprue cutter here. Obviously in a smoothbore, that's not so much of a consideration. So my understanding is that this is really a mark of something which was used at the time when rifled firearms were primarily being used with the round ball. And so obviously this is probably quite a late bullet mold from that perspective. There are no markings on it that I've been able to see, but it serves a purpose of illustration and will allow me to sort of explain how these worked. And certainly these bullet molds of this type did exist in the 17th century, very, very similar to this, and it will allow me to sort of explain that point a little bit more clearly. When you try and describe to someone that it's like a pair of pliers with a half mold on each side instead of a pair of jaws, it's not quite clear what you're trying to describe. So having something to show them will be good from that point of view. And this was not expensive. And Ian's actually sent me some lead, as you can see here, to cast some bullets should I wish to. So I'm going to have a go at that at some point. And this is one reason. Well, these were wrapped up in a piece of bubble wrap in the corner. I couldn't quite see what was in it, and when I went to pick it up, of course, it's exceedingly heavy, as lead is. So I was a little bit surprised when I opened that up, but thank you very much, Ian. That will allow me, as I say, to cast some bullets, which I'm going to have a go at. Right, so Gulf War kit, Gulf War items, and that's not necessarily military kit, all of it, some other bits and pieces as well, and we'll start with those. So we have here a couple of Pepsi cans. Now these show up in footage, very common in footage from the Gulf. The NAAFI basically bought local supplies of products which they obviously could have bought from the UK and had shipped over, but they were available locally, and Pepsi is one example of that. So we have here, obviously, the cans with Arabic script, and these were sold in Saudi Arabia. Now this is a slightly earlier steel can example from the 80s, I believe, and this is certainly one that this is exactly what you would see in the 90s, in the early 90s. A little bit worn, but be nice addition, nice small bit of kit for a display. You see it has an early ring pull design, and in both instances the ring pulls are intact. These have been drained out of the bottom, as you can see. So from a display point of view, it'll look quite nice, sat on as part of a table display. Just an element of small kit or personal items, I guess you could say. Something I've done for other eras and other theatres of war. Obviously Vietnam, I have some empty beer cans from that era to go with the Australian kit. I thought it'd be nice, and when putting on a Gulf War display, to have a period Pepsi can, and particularly nice that these came with the ring pull intact, so when it's sat like that, it looks like it could be full, much as it's a little bit worn. So yeah, a couple of Pepsi cans there. I'll say this one slightly earlier, this one appropriate for the Gulf War period. Basically per a modern drinks can in aluminium, just with the earlier design of ring pull there, as you can see. Right, so what should we move on to next? Pair of boots. Have a look at these, dig these out. There we go. So we have here one example of the Saudi desert boots. Now these are the cheaper version of these. They're rough out, as you can see, rough out leather, suede leather. They have a black rubber sole, as you can see here. The tread is interestingly quite similar to the British DMS tread pattern. And you can see we have the sizing on the bottom there with the numerals there, the Arabic numerals, and then the 44 there, which is a European sizing, obviously. You can see the comparison there. I don't know if we'll be able to see down inside here. We'll try and get some light down in here. Bring the light over. You might be able to see. It needs to be the other way up, sorry. Let's try again. Pull that out of the way and bring the light in here. It's difficult to see, but you may be able to see the marking down inside the boot there, just the way these are folded in. But made in Saudi Arabia anyway. And as I say, these are an example of the cheaper boots which were around at the time. There were a nicer made pair, a nicer made version of these that had a zip up the side as well. These don't have that. But an example of Saudi desert boots from the Gulf War period anyway. The other examples of these with the zip had both a brown and a black rubber sole as well. You see both variations. So, as I say, a pair of Saudi desert boots there, and we'll talk more about those on the channel going forward, of course. Right, so what should we look at next? Dig out of here. Oh, we have a box here, and I think I know what's in here. We open this up. Yes, pull this out here. We have various other items in there, which we'll talk about when we look at this in more detail. This is a Trimble GPS system, and this is something that will feature in a video on the channel going forward. This is a Gulf War era GPS system, very simple GPS, obviously still quite a bit of storage dust and so forth on it. I'll give this a bit of a clean.
sold as functional, so I'll put some batteries in this and have a go at getting it running and see if it works, see if it will still give you a position. But this is an early GPS system, and one of the designs that was used in the Gulf. There was another example, another design that was used as well, another GPS system for a different manufacturer. I can't remember off the top of my head the designation of that one, but anyway, I'll hopefully be picking up an example of one of those in the future as well. But we have this, and as I say, I'm going to try and get it running, and we'll have a look at this in more detail. These were commonly used, and obviously this is one of the first instances of GPS being used. It is the first instance of GPS being used in a war. Obviously these have been used in training prior to that, and used by both British and US forces in the Gulf. May have been provided to the French as well and other coalition forces. I'm not entirely sure on that, but certainly used by Britain. There are many photographs of these being used in initial training prior to obviously the move into Iraq and then into Kuwait, and they were used during the advance as well, obviously for navigation in the desert. So rather nice. It came with some other accessories, this carry bag, and as I say, we will be having a look at that in a future video in more detail. So very pleased to have this, obviously shipped over from the US, not something you can easily find over here. The final thing to have a look at here is something Ian has very kindly sorted for me and gifted to me. I'll bring this over here. I'll say the final thing to look at, the final element of militaria to have a look at, is a US night camo parka, as you can see. So it has the liner as well. We get the label into view there. Liner night camouflage parka desert, as you can see. So the desert night parka with its liner. These were quite popular, obviously with British troops. There are quite a few instances, quite a few people recall trading things to get hold of these, and I've wanted one for a while, and Ian very kindly sourced one for me and sent it over with this lot. So very kind of him. They aren't particularly hard to find, but it's really nice to have one in this condition with the liner. A really lovely thing, and thank you very much again, Ian, for this. Much appreciated. Again, something which will be showing up in a future video going forward on the channel, no doubt. So the final thing I'll mention here is why the box was quite so big. Ian has very kindly provided me with all sorts of US, well, American snacks, which you can't get over here. So it's going to be nice to try these. A huge collection, a huge selection of various bits and pieces here, as you can see. So going to enjoy trying these. Some of these I've not had before. Some of these have been sent previously in snack boxes. Ian previously sent me a selection of US candy in another lot of bits and pieces. So some of the candy we've had previously, but the other snacks not before. So it's going to be nice to try these. I think we're going to end up sharing these with the guys we play Dungeons and Dragons with another nerdy hobby of mine. So thank you very much indeed, Ian. Finishing off there with this. This is why the box was quite so big and wouldn't fit in frame. And yes, it's a really nice little collection of bits and pieces which have arrived, including all these snacks which we're going to enjoy trying. So thank you very much indeed once again, Ian, and that is everything. So I do hope you found it interesting looking at these various bits and pieces which have arrived. Obviously, many of these will feature in future videos on the channel going forward, looking at them in more detail, and we're going to enjoy the snacks. Thank you for sending those over in. Say share them with the D&D group in an upcoming game, during an upcoming game. I think that's going to be a rather nice way of enjoying them. If you found this interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as I always say, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.